In this final optional video for MATH0011 Methods 2, I'm going to quickly talk about some other ways to write and run Python code. In 0011 we've only used Jupyter notebooks, but that's not the only way people write Python code, and it's not even the most popular way. What's more, it has some limitations. For example, it's tricky to create your own modules using Jupyter notebooks. The text editing facilities can be a little basic. So let's look at some other ways to write Python. The simplest is to use a text editor. There are thousands of text editor programs, and the kind of thing I'm talking about is Notepad on Windows, or TextEdit on a Mac, or Vim like I'm using here. When you create a file to hold your Python code, it must be a simple plain text file, not the kind of file that's produced by a word processor like Microsoft Word. You need to type your Python code into your file and save it with a .py extension. So some editors even have very fancy facilities that make it easier to write Python in them. Here in Vim, I'm going to save the simplest Python program I can think of in a file called hello.py. Once you've done this, you can run your Python code by sending your file to the Python interpreter. How you do that depends heavily on what kind of computer you have, so I'm not going to explain anything about doing that. On my computer, all I have to do is open up a terminal and then type Python, then the name of the file that I created. When I press enter, you can see that my Python program gets executed, and it does what I saved in the file. A more popular way to write and execute Python code is through what's called an IDE, which is short for Integrated Development Environment. Here's an example of an IDE. This one's called Spider3. An IDE is basically a very fancy text editor which has very special facilities that make it easier to write Python code and to execute Python code and to find problems with your Python code. As well as Spider3, there are many other possibilities. There's one called Idle, one called Visual Studio Code, one called PyCharm, and many, many more. I'll do a quick demo of Spider3. In the window on the left, I've entered some Python code for computing a certain sum. It defines a function sm, which computes the value of a certain nested summation. And then a little bit lower down, it prints out some of the values that summation takes on. So if I run this, you can see in the window on the left, then the result is printed out. And there's also things like a help window here, where I can get help on any Python function that I like. And it has lots of fancy facilities that make creating Python code here it's very simple. For example, if I import NumPy, then when I type np dot, as if I want to use a NumPy function, Spider will suggest to me all of the possible NumPy functions and objects. So let's say we create a NumPy array, call it ARR, and then if I want to use some function on ARR, so I type ARR dot, then it will suggest all the possible things which could apply to a NumPy array object. Spider3 has lots of other facilities as well. If you're interested in this kind of thing, it's worth installing it on your own computer and having a play around with it. So how can we take Python further? A good start is to install it on your own computer. And the simplest way to do that is to install the Anaconda software, which you can get at the website anaconda.com. I've opened the web page on anaconda.com that has the download link right here. Anaconda can be installed on a Windows computer or a Mac or a Linux computer, and it gives you much more than just Python itself. For example, it will install modules like NumPy and Matplotlib that we used in 0011, as well as many other popular modules. It will install the Jupyter Notebook software that we used in 0011. It'll install the Spider IDE that you just saw, and many, many other useful things for working with Python. If you want to learn more about Python, then there are some suggestions for ways to take it further on the Moodle page. And that's it. I hope you've enjoyed the Python part of 0011, and I hope you'll enjoy using Python more in your future careers.